So you're a Norse pagan and you're perhaps wondering, what incense should I be using in spells and rituals? Simple fact of the matter that within the archaeological record, within archaeobotany studies, and within the just general written record, there's not really a lot to say. Unlike ancient Roman religion, ancient Greek religion, ancient Egyptian religion, we don't necessarily have a lot of sources that are going to specifically say this incense was burned for the gods for this reason. There's some things within the archaeological record that would, however, suggest the usage of it. Certain folk practices can be traced to a time period where we can assume that it's a leftover from pre-Christian religion. Resin clumps have been found in fireplaces. And there is the rare, non-specific attestation to the usage of it. You are by no means beholden to what history we can either guess or surmise. There are good options. Now, the first thing we have to remember is that things like frankincense and myrrh, while generically useful in a wide variety of religion for ritual purposes, that for the Scandinavians, these would have been foreign and imported, so expensive. So while I can't deny that they were ever used for ritual, there's no evidence that it was, and if it was, it most likely was for, high rituals and rare events, if at all. So a good option that is both common enough to find and just in general is attested to is juniper. There is a lot of reference of specifically juniper being used to fumigate houses, and while it's somewhat argued on, there's a decent amount of evidence to suggest the fumigation of houses and barns for purity, and especially in the cases of barns, keeping, bad spirits away. A lot of archaeological record that would heavily suggest from both grave sites and found and unearthed ritual sites that the usage of conifer wood resins was just in general used a lot. A lot of these are local and just in general are aromatic wood. Unfortunately, this is purely an evidence-based suggestion. We know it was used, but we don't know if it was used for ritual, what for. So just in general, the local pines, spruces, and firs. Of course, the resin made from these have been found at a number of graves, have been found at a number of hearths that we can connect to possible ritual use, as well as specifically used in resin torches. Also a popular choice, mugwort. We don't have historical evidence of mugwort being used as a resin. However, as an herb that was burned, it has a lot of properties, mostly dealing with protection, with evidence of its usage in North Sea Germanic cultures, which Scandinavia is a part of, as well as its use in the Nine Herb Charm and within Germanic folk magic in general. We also have Angelica, which is a plant that we have a lot of evidence for being really important to folk practices. In both Iceland and Norway, we have a lot of evidence to suggest that this was a protective plant in general, being both burnt and worn as a charm to ward against malevolent spirits and disease. We also have yarrow, primarily seen as a folk medicine, but it was also believed that the smoke of yarrow could also help in the healing of a person. These are by no means the only options for making an incense that are at the very least historically accurate. But as I said earlier, we don't actually know the complete story of the historical accuracy. Nor should historical accuracy be used to limit you. I am not a medical professional, so I do not entirely know of the consequences of burning many of these herbs, especially if you yourself plan to fumigate, especially with mugwort. Be careful. And be mindful of fire safety. And here is a list of some of my sources. Be vigilant, be safe, be heathen.